All right. Hey guys, Jordy from Seven Eagle. I am so excited today. I got an awesome guest, Matt Lewis. He is a distinguished soldier. He went to West Point and then served 25 years in the military, and then went on to spend another 20 years in corporate America working for powerhouses like Procter and Gamble, General Electric, Deloitte. Lives in Cincinnati. Also wrote, he's an author and wrote some awesome books. One of them is The Mission Transition and Opportunities and Obstacles for Post-Military Career. I hope I got that title right, Matt.
Pretty close. You're right there. Yep.
Hey, guy, I'm in the neighborhood. That's good. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat and to share your story and to offer some advice to our community here. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, glad to do it, Jordy. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Do you mind starting out, tell everyone a little bit about your Army experience and your military and what you did and what you learned from that, how it made you, an effective and successful civilian worker as well.
Yeah, sure. So let's break down that 25 years, if you will. West Point grad, obviously 4 years there, 5 years on active duty as a tanker, armor officer in the Army, and then additional 16 years in the reserves where I worked for West Point, the military academy, as well as some stints at the Pentagon and ODESOPS, Office of Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. So that's how that breaks out. I am an older gentleman, but those 25 and 20 years weren't in series. There's a good portion of that in parallel. Yeah, still clicking away in the corporate world,
Yep.
Deloitte being the day job, if you will. But veterans is a personal passion project of mine. You mentioned the first book. There's two other paths I'm taking to help eliminate the civil military divide in the country. To get at your question, my experience, I think, is like a lot of other veterans in that they bring with them a skill set that it could be hard skills, technical skills that they've acquired through their time in service and their military occupational specialty. But if it's not hard skills, like my hard skills were being a trigger puller, and perhaps that's a good thing. We don't see too many tanks strolling down the street in your neighborhood. But those of us that do serve in a combat arms capacity, which by the way is less than 15% of veterans, they need to find, for the most part, being a whole new way of being. But aside from the hard skills, veterans absolutely bring soft skills with them. Leadership, team building, ability to communicate, ability to operate in disparate cultures and communities and locations around the world. All of these things are skills in demand that civilian organizations today absolutely will put to use immediately. The challenge that veterans have is identifying those and translating those effectively such that your potential civilian employers understand that you actually have those skills and understand that. So
Yeah, that's great. How did you know you wanted to go from the military to, say, P&G? Like, what was there were there people helping you? Did you have to figure it out on your own?
yeah, and that whole story is a good reason behind why I ended up writing the book. When I left active duty way back in the mid 90s, there was very little support available to those of us leaving the service. And I was but one data point of a whole generation of veterans at that point in time that got out with that very little support. In the absence of having that, necessity is the mother of invention. And at the time, I utilized a book that has been a perennial bestseller called "What Color's Your Parachute?"
Yeah.
Aimed for civilians, helping them do career change. That, in combination with a bunch of others, networking, informational interviewing, all of the tools and processes in there were what worked for me. So I kind of cobbled together my own approach, and in the ensuing years, knowing that my blood brothers and sisters behind me were following suit, I began to reach back just one-on-one basis, coaching individuals. And over the years, this process built and built. I consistently got two pieces of feedback. One was, hey, thanks, because typically folks would end up well, successfully. But two is, hey, you really ought to find a way to scale what you're doing. There's literally hundreds of thousands of us getting out every year. Have you ever thought about writing a book? To which I would always laugh because I got a D in my freshman year English at West Point. And I figure there's no way that I should be writing books. Anyway, fast forward, now we're, 20 plus years away from my exiting active duty. I have classmates, brothers and sisters in arms that have devoted their entire careers, theirs and their families, in service to the country. And in spite of all of the additional support that's come along by way of transition assistance programs and the service, what have you, they're all largely still left fending for themselves. And that's when I saw that. And for me, that was kind of the spark where I said, all right, this stops now. I'm finally going to pick up the advice that I've been getting for years, actually start putting pen to paper. And the outcome of that effort has been the book you see over my shoulder right here. And it's intended to be a practical guide. Frankly, at a high level, think of What Color's Your Parachute for veterans conceptually. But it's a practical guide for veterans, helping them find their optimal career field, realizing full employment upon their exit from the service, which is incredibly powerful. We can get into as to why that is.
I love the fact that you came out and you saw, oh my God, this is a little harder than I thought it should be. And if you're having trouble, that means there are probably thousands of other guys going through the same challenges, and you're helping out with this book. And I encourage everyone to please check it out and read it. Do you mind sharing some of the your favorite suggestions or tips for guys coming out from the book? That's some things that they can take away today.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, and this kind of ties into your last question as well, is that there's no one path for folks. In fact, there's multiple paths, and you'll see a career tree towards the front of the book that describes what those multiple paths look like, what the skill sets required are. My personal path was graduate school, and for me, having an internship in the midst of that graduate school experience was incredibly impactful. I realized, think of it as having an ability to confirm or deny your career hypothesis, if you will.
Yeah.
And whether that's a match or not is exceedingly valuable. My own experience was it wasn't the career field that I thought I wanted to go into, and that prevented me, upon graduating from graduate school, to enter a field that did match with my skill sets. Why that's so important is studies show if veterans are able to land an optimal career field coming from the service, over the course of that career, they will more than double their earnings, rates of retention, and job satisfaction. So it's incredibly important up front that you do that. I would suggest utilizing SkillBridge or any other sort of apprenticeship or internship that you can get a hold of. To speak to some of the rest of the question that you're asking in terms of things to do or perhaps not to do. One is to take heart and start early. Don't wait until the last 90 days. In fact, in the book, you'll see I recommend you start at least 24 months out. Having been there, I know that sounds insane, but look at it this way. The military spends anywhere from 6 to 12 months putting you through basic advanced training to turn you into modern day warrior. They spend 5 days on the flip side trying to turn you into civilian in terms of the training and offers they provide. It don't work.
Yeah.
So you need to take on your own course of study, do some self-reflection up front. The important part of that being to understand who before what, which, by the way, is the key point coming out of What Color's Your Parachute with Dick Bowles. Meaning, if you first identify your own personal passions, strengths, whatever's going to get you out of bed in the morning, and can connect that to an optimal career field, that will result in success 86% of the time. Yeah. Whereas if you just focus on what, meaning I'm going to put my military occupational specialty into a skill translator and I'll go do whatever that spits out. For me, as an old tanker and armor officer, if I'd have listened to that, I should have been a police officer or a truck driver or something along those lines. Nothing against those professions, but that had absolutely nothing to do with what I wanted to do and what I had a passion for.
Yeah.
So you need to undertake that reflection and go do that. So start early. The other thing I would emphasize is the importance of tribe. So this involves networking.
Yeah.
I purposely used the word tribe. It's shown and demonstrated that to the extent you can leverage your peers, your peer set, and whatever your target is, your employment target, start there and then begin to broaden your aperture. So you start with your veteran peers that have come out, and then network to their friends, and then their friends to their friends. The more quickly that you can do that and go through those concentric circles, the better and more easily you're going to assimilate with the culture of that organization, which is incredibly impactful. So the
Yeah.
last thing I'll offer is just in approaching my book, again, Mission Transition, is start at the beginning and read chapter by chapter to the end. It's not meant to be a sit down and read in one sitting. It's intended to be a field manual. It is a crawl, walk, run, step 1, 2, 3, lots of exercises, visuals to help walk you through how to get from where you're at in the service to where you ought to be, based on, again, what your personal passions and strengths are.
Absolutely. That's such great advice. I love what you were saying about finding that passion. Just like you took that internship, I believe, in the auto industry, and you said it was one of the best experiences for you, but you didn't even go into auto. But that
Right.
taught you that taught you that maybe I should look in some other areas. So I love that advice, because that passion is everything. You got to, head down a path where you're going to be excited, like you said, to get out of bed.
Problem is most veterans don't do that. They're just looking to replace a revenue stream, and as a result, they just take the first shiny thing that they find.
Right.
That results in job hopping,
Yep.
just to have a
Just
job and a
kill it.
revenue stream, such that by their sixth post-military job, they're still not, more than half are
Right.
still not in a career field of their choosing. That
Right.
does nothing for you in terms of building your wealth, does nothing for your family or your
Right.
prospective employers. All
Yep.
that churn costs everyone across the board. So
Everyone.
don't make
Yeah,
that mistake.
I think the internet makes it so enticing and easy to say, "Oh, let me apply. They're hiring," without spending 2 minutes thinking about, do I really even want that job if I'm offered it? So to your point there, can you touch, Matt, a little bit on the networking? Because I think this part is so important, and I feel a lot of people get it wrong when they're looking for jobs. They'll say, "Hey, are you networking?" And they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've been handing out my resume to people." And just talk a little bit about maybe some of the better ways to go about networking than,
Yeah, carpet bombing resumes is not no substitute for networking. And part of the problem is it tends to be a negative connotation around networking in the military, and I believe it still permeates. It's kind of viewed as sucking up,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. The true purpose of networking in the real world it can be further from the truth. The intent of it is to be mutually beneficial. Now, coming out of the service, you may not have a ton that you can offer by way of reciprocation, but that over time you will. Don't use that as an excuse not to start reaching out and asking people for help. It's absolutely a requirement, frankly. Most uh, uh, jobs, careers are ultimately landed through individual connections, personal connections, and those are made through networking. There's lots of technical tools out there now to support that, be it LinkedIn or other online platforms. But the approach, initially can take on the form of informational interviewing, and I read about it. Mission Transition, What Color's Your Parachute? Spends a lot of time on there. They kind of coined the term. The idea being that, short of doing a full-blown internship or apprenticeship, just going and shadowing or even interviewing someone for a period of time within a given day to better understand what their career, what their field, their industry looks like, and use that to inform your decision making. So I can't underestimate it. The other point that I would say why this is so important is in networking with people and understanding what life is like for the other half on the outside, as it were, is understanding the multiple cultural dimensions that you're ultimately going to face. And when you come out, you're going to hit a couple dozen of these things are going to smack you square in the face. And I spend the last 2 chapters of the book kind of peeling back the layers of that onion. Everything from, your purpose, your core for being, the way in which training is done, the way in which you're rewarded, all through to, where and how you live and support systems in your communities. All of that changes overnight. And if you're not clued in and have done some homework to prepare for it, you're going to end up, juggling a couple dozen of these things simultaneously, and not all those balls are going to stay in the air. So again, the more you can do to prepare yourself and your families for this change, which is a windfall, is going to serve you
Yeah.
all much better.
And as a civilian sort of working in the military community for the last 6 years, there is nothing as tight as the bonds that the military have for one another. Just like you've sort of made this your passion or your mission now to help your brothers and sisters. It's like there's so many people out there who will help, but you got to ask, and you can't be shy to put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And, the other important point of doing that is you got to understand that there's a huge gap. I call it the civil military gap
Yeah.
that you're going to have to cross. And let me just quantify that gap for you with a couple of statistics. Never forget that you're part of the less than 0.5% of the country that served on active duty anytime post 9/11. Understand that if you're on, a little bit mature or older in your military career, there's been a 90% drop of individuals in the leading the corporate world that have any military experience whatsoever. Well, the
Wow.
Wall Street Journal pegs that percentage at less than 2.5% now, and all of those rates are going further south in the decades to come. So flip those figures around. There's better than a 97.5% chance that the individual sitting across the table from you conducting an interview has no idea who
Yeah.
you are as a veteran, what you've done, what you can do. And frankly, they don't have the time to do the homework. And so it's incumbent upon you as the veteran to do the homework, to proactively understand what it is they're looking for and how to translate what you've done so it makes sense to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You've worked at three of America's most iconic companies. Can you talk now to the hiring manager, to the CEO of a business who might be watching this, and telling him or her, what does a veteran bring to the table? Why should they give a veteran an opportunity? We're not talking about charity here. We're talking about getting a superstar on the team. And what are some of the benefits they can derive from that?
Yeah. So in my second book, currently in manuscript form, to which HarperCollins has also laid claim, I use the hyperbole that by hiring veterans, you're bringing on a competitive economic weapon. And at scale, it not only benefits the competitiveness and productivity of your company, but at scale, the economy overall in the country. You're bringing folks again that have potential hard skills. And again, I'll reference, more than 85% of vets coming out don't fall into the Hollywood stereotype of, grunts on the ground and shooting direct weapons or tanks or field artillery pieces. These are people that have served in capacities in logistics and finance and medical services and technology, fields that would be immediately accredited to your organization in the real world. And again, beyond the hard skills, all of those individuals bring with them the soft skills that they've all learned through the tenure of their time in service. They are used to working as both a member of squad. They know how to follow, and as they've risen through the ranks, they've also learned how to lead, and to influence people in a positive direction. They've learned how to, almost everyone in the service these days has deployed somewhere for whatever reason, combat or otherwise. So they've all worked in disparate communities, disparate environments. They know how to create order from chaos, which is in most part what the military in general does.
Yeah.
So, again, these are all skills that your organization is going to be able to put to use. Now, these veterans may struggle with explaining that to you in terms that you may understand. And that's why I'm writing the second book, to help you kind of meet them halfway in understanding what those skill sets are and the incremental value that they can provide.
Guys, anyone watching this, please check out Matt's book. You can look on Amazon, The Mission Transition. It's an incredible read. It'll be well worth your time to get through it and get you on a career that's going to, be in line with your goals and your mission, and help you learn from all the mistakes that other people have made before you. Matt, I thank you so much, man. This was awesome. I could tell your passion and love for the veterans, and it really shines through. And I'm so inspired by you and the work that you're doing to help everyone.
Hey, glad to do it, Jordy. Again, thanks for having me. Folks should understand that in addition to the book, check out my website. There's literally a quarter of the original manuscript for free out there. It's matthewjlewis.com. Lewis is in St. Louis. Dozens of resources there that accompany some of the exercises in the book.
I'll put everything in the description too, so you'll have the links to all of Matt's stuff. Matt, thanks again. Appreciate it.
All right, Jordy.